Hi, I'm Priya, and this is where real stories, real research, and real conversations all come together. Welcome to the PurposePro Podcast, where we take the mic on issues that actually shape teen lives. Let's be real. Failure sucks. Whether it's a bad grade, a job rejection, or feeling like you messed up a relationship, falling short never feels good. But what if we're looking at failure all wrong? What if failing isn't the end of the story, but the beginning of a better one? Well, today we're digging into what it means to fail forward, to take what didn't work, learn from it, and use it to grow. We'll talk about failure in school, in life, and in those personal moments nobody else sees. We'll also look at how perfectionism and social pressure can make failure feel way worse than it actually is. Most of all, we'll explore how failure, if we let it, can shape us into stronger, wiser, more self aware people. So, what does it mean to fail forward? The phrase comes from leadership coach John C. Maxwell, and it's all about how we respond to failure. Are we letting it define us, or are we learning from it and moving forward? The idea is that failure isn't just a thing that happens to you. It can actually push you to level up if you pay attention. Now, this shows up in school all the time. You fail a test, you bomb a presentation, and suddenly you're questioning your intelligence or your worth. But educators and psychologists agree. Failure in school is not just normal, it's essential. The students who grow the most aren't the ones who never mess up. They're the ones who mess up, reflect, and try again. And it's not just about academics. Maybe your relationship ends. Maybe you don't get the role you auditioned for. Maybe you launch something big and nobody pays attention. Well, those moments can feel devastating, like proof that you're not good enough. But time and time again, people who keep going after failure end up discovering things that they wouldn't have learned about themselves otherwise. Resilience, boundaries, what actually matters to them. But here's the thing. Gen Z struggles with failure more than most generations before us. Why? Two big reasons: perfectionism and social media. Studies show that socially prescribed perfectionism has gone way up, meaning a lot of us feel like other people expect us to be flawless all the time. Add in curated highlight reels we scroll through every day, and it's easy to feel like we're falling behind just for being human. Perfectionism doesn't make us better. It makes us afraid. Afraid to try, afraid to fall, afraid to be seen in progress. But guess what? Progress is messy. Growth doesn't look good on Instagram, and failure is literally how you build grit. As Angela Duckworth, the author of Grit, says, perseverance in the face of failure matters more than talent. So, how do we start failing forward? First, we reframe the narrative. Instead of I failed, say I learned. Then ask yourself, what did this teach me? What could I try differently next time? Second, practice self compassion. You wouldn't talk to a friend the way you talk to yourself after a mess up. Be kind. Be honest and let it be part of the process. Third, take action. Maybe you revise your approach. Maybe you ask for feedback. Maybe you just get back up and try again. Whatever it is, don't stop moving. And finally, let's normalize talking about failure. The more we share our setbacks, the more we build a culture where it's okay to fail. And even better, it's okay to grow. Today, we'll hear from somebody who knows this firsthand, who has turned their failures into stepping stones. Joe Elliott, the founder and executive director of Catalyst Collective, is joining us for an interview today. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, Priya. I'm glad to be here. It's going to be great.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself, just to start off. Give us a little background. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I'm a very average Joe. Nothing too special about me. I grew up in Houston, Texas. Moved to Austin out of school. Went to school for a business degree, and and kind of found myself in the tech world and before getting roped into the nonprofit realm and trying to solve big problems. So I think at my core, I'm a problem solver. I love to be creative, think creatively, and that means taking a lot of risks.
Which is very key to this whole idea of failing forward, I think.
Absolutely. I've become a pro at learning about failure and not being afraid of it.
Yeah. So let's start off with the hardball questions here.
Go
What
for it.
does failing forward mean to you? Just as a concept. I know that's pretty broad, but when you hear failing forward, what do you think in your head?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, I think it's more of a uh almost a philosophy that you have to have as a creative, as somebody who is maybe entrepreneurial. You have to have a viewpoint that any failure brings you closer to your goal ultimately, not even though it doesn't feel like it at the time. And I think that is what distinguishes people that are risk takers and entrepreneurs versus people who probably are better off just working for somebody. They take failure really personally, really hard, whereas the other way to look at it and the truth of failure is that it it should bring you one step closer to your goal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. That's really nice. So along that line of something bringing you closer to your goal, even if you can't see it, can you maybe give us a little anecdote or an example from your own life? What was the time when you failed at something or you experienced something that felt like a really tough blow, but you eventually grew from it, even if in that moment it was difficult to see where the growth was going to come from?
Yeah, I'll definitely answer that with some specifics, but I think the reason why, failure brings you closer to your goal is because it's like Mike Tyson says, yeah, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Right.
So, to piggyback off of Mike, you start with a plan, you have a goal, you have a vision, something doesn't go right, or it could go terribly wrong. And in that instant, you learned what you did wrong, and therefore you know not what to do, right? And or you know what not to do. I said that backwards. Instead, you know how to avoid that, and therefore create a new plan that allows you to not avoid that obstacle again. I remember my first job out of college. I was working for Dell Computer. And at Dell, I was in their sales department. It's like call center like. It's almost like where everybody started with Dell at that point because everybody's calling in to buy computers. Dell's the computer everybody wants. This is before Apple gets really cool and hot and everybody wants Apple, right? So that's how old I am. But Apple had the same kind of setup in their organization. And so during training, they sit me down with all the best sales reps so you can listen in to what they're doing, which was great, right? The sales reps were using the playbook Dell had given them. This is how we train you to do it. This is how we want you to do it, right? Um, but I didn't want to be a good sales rep. I wanted to be the best sales rep. And so I wanted to win the trips to Hawaii and everything that they were offering. So I asked if I could sit down with the people that were doing the worst. And so and so as I was learning from the people that were at the bottom of the barrel and maybe we're going to get fired, I saw like some of the things that they were doing right and some of the things that they were doing wrong. And actually, that helped me formulate my strategy more so than just copying what all the number one people were doing. So again, I had to find my own way forward, but the ultimate goal of that was like I started to take calls and I didn't do it the way they taught me to do it, and I got in a lot of trouble. But I was closing more sales than anybody else was on the floor. I was the number one rep in like within 2 months of my job there. And so the failure in that was I was getting reprimanded a lot for not following the system.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think a lot of what Dell learned, especially our managers, was that there was something I was doing right that nobody had tried before. And so I was kind of blazing a new trail without trying to blaze a new trail. Now, part of that's just my DNA. But that's an example of, you can learn a lot even when other people are telling you you're doing something wrong. So that was my first experience. I've had a lot of other ones since then, and one of my
Yeah,
favorite ones was when I transitioned out of the tech world and I worked for the church, which is a radically different field.
I'm
Again,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you've ever been to church, or if you been to a youth, if you were a part of a youth ministry growing up, right? Yeah, youth ministry, kind of had its heyday in the '90s and early 2000s, and then attendance really started to deteriorate based on a lot of cultural factors. So in that time, I was leading a an organization that was or a youth group that was dying essentially. 20, maybe 20 youth were a part of the group. My operating budget was $500 a month. And so when you're operating in a place where you're like, I don't know how what is success? How are we going to reach more students? How are we going to help impact and change lives? And I didn't feel like I had the money to do it. That's right. That's where there's two different types of people. There's the type of person that gets creative and says, well, let's just try things that we haven't tried before. And then there's the other type of person that says it just can't be done. They make excuses. I don't have the money, I don't have the resources, I don't have the cool youth group room, I don't have anything of what I need in order to make me successful as a youth pastor, right? And that's the path most people take. But in that scenario, instead of looking at the excuses, I said, well, let's try things that nobody else was doing. And that's ultimately how the organization at Catalyst got started, is we tried something that nobody else was doing in the city, and it worked. So,
So sort of like blazing your own trail a little bit, and when it feels like there's no real path forward, like where are we going next? Using that creativity and that productive mindset to move forward.
yes, I think and that's why, part of it stems from, to be a person, to really be successful in creative and new adventures, you have to have the mindset that I can't lose, right? Even when I lose, all I did was learn a new way of not doing things, so I still won. I didn't get to the goal as quickly as I wanted to,
You
but I'm
took a
still going to
detour,
get there.
but you learned something along the way.
Right. Yeah. And so you're gonna eventually win. It's just a matter of time, right?
The
And
side quest.
yeah, totally. That's the mindset you have to have. It's like, dang,
Right.
I thought I was going to win a long time ago, but I eventually won, right? It just
Yeah.
just took a little bit longer. It took a little bit longer to learn from my failings. Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
So, my next question for you,
Hmm.
which you sort of mentioned earlier that wanting to be the best and not just I don't want to be just a good salesman. I want to be the best salesman they've ever seen. I want to win all those trips to Hawaii.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, a lot of that like shame and guilt that comes with the idea of fear, a lot of it is that perfectionism and that deep need to hit the standard or you failed. There's nothing in between absolute perfection and complete failure.
Hmm.
So, my question for you is why do you think that feeling is so incredibly devastating, specifically for teenagers? As a teenager who is just starting to navigate what it looks like to have a real life and on that cusp of adulthood and childhood, why does that feeling hit so hard? Why is it so incredibly devastating?
Yeah. What's interesting, if we compare the generations, I do think it is harder for your generation. And if you're in school right now, you grew up with a view of the world where the perception wasn't the reality, right? And so yeah, I mean, if you're going to spend a lot of time on social media, you're seeing the polished product, right? And everybody seems like they're winning. Everything seems perfect, right? that so and so's crushing it. They're beautiful views, beautiful. They're getting follows, they're getting sales, they're getting X, Y, and Z, and like it feels like anything short of that is failure. But what you don't see behind the scenes is all the failure that they incurred getting up to that point, right? Yeah, I talk to a lot of influencers. I've coached them through, I mentored them through our program, very successful individuals. And what you see is not the reality of the journey of how you get there. And so it makes it seem like, you know, I'm gonna get there really quickly, like the person I've been following did. But
Yeah.
they did get there quickly. They
Growth
didn't.
is not linear for anybody.
It's not for anybody. And so you don't really know that and understand that until you get maybe a little bit older or you've had the opportunity to be around really successful people and then they tell you the story, their story, and they're like, "Oh, wow. I had no idea you went through that. I had no idea that was your journey," right? Because all you saw was the end product, and the
Right.
end product was perfect. So I think a lot of it is just you haven't had the experience of being with people as they're on their journey. But if you had that experience, you would see, oh wow. I'll give you an example. A lot of over the last 10 years, you talk to a lot of boys and they would say, I want to be a gamer. I want to be a
Yeah.
professional gamer, right? Well, cool,
I want to be a YouTuber. I want
but
to
if
be
I,
an
when
influencer.
totally, and when you ask any of them, do you know what those guys do on a daily basis? Because I've been around them and I know. And it's incredibly detailed, difficult, boring work, right? They will it takes them almost a full day or more to plan and to set up, right?
Yeah.
And to do the videos and post-production and editing. Yeah, they do a little bit of gaming, right? They do. They do a little bit of gaming. But that's not most of the work. Most of the work
There's a
is
lot
in
more
the
that goes
setup,
into
is
it.
in the production, is in the post-production, is in all the details behind the scenes that end in the cool fun video that got chopped up into a million pieces and looks like it was just a blast. Somebody was just playing games for an hour.
Yeah.
That's not really what happened. And if those guys were to follow those guys around and see what they actually did, they might be like, "Oh, this is going to take a lot of work, right?" And so
Right.
some of the glamour kind of maybe fades when you go behind the scenes and see what it really takes to be successful.
So some of it is that unrealistic expectation,
Yeah.
especially because of social media, right? And
Right.
again, only seeing your start and your finish and not seeing what happens in between.
100%. 100%. The journey is grueling no matter what. And some people can get lucky. Maybe they hit the lottery and they had an idea that had instant success. But I rarely meet those kind of people.
But even that sort of instant success takes work too.
It does. It does. I mean, you can, like, if you've ever watched Shark Tank and you've watched people pitch their business ideas to
Yeah.
Mark Cuban and folks like that, I guarantee you that wasn't their first idea. That wasn't their first business. That wasn't their first attempt. That might have been business number 9 or 10, after they failed on so many different things going back 10,
Yeah.
20 years, right? And here they are on a TV show, finally with something that still doesn't even guarantee success, has the possibility of being
Of
successful.
success. Yeah.
Yeah. I think here's the thing. Like, I think what's missing, to go back to your question, when you're young, is the appreciation of the journey, right?
Right.
Just enjoying the journey, just enjoying the fact that, hey, you get to try something that could be really, really good or impactful or, lucrative in some way, shape, or form. And that you have the freedom to take an idea and pursue it is one of the beautiful parts of, being in America. And so I think I think enjoying the journey for what it is something that we don't often stop and appreciate, you know?
So don't be in a rush necessarily.
Yeah. I'd say like, you know how, so for example, like a lot of, and it's not just young people. We talk about the mental health crisis a lot. There's a lot of depression, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of things that we're dealing with that are very prevalent today that weren't as common, right? Even 20 years ago. And I think a lot of that again can stem from right, having the right mindset. When you wake up in the day, right? If you wake up in the day with an attitude of gratitude and you're taking a minute to pause before the day starts, say, man, this is what I'm grateful for today. I'm grateful for these friends, for this family, for this opportunity. And no matter what happens, I am blessed because I have these things. That kind of prevalent mindset builds resiliency in your mind and in your heart so that as you go out through the day, and if you get punched in the face a few times, you're more likely to be able to absorb that and keep moving forward because even though you took the L, you you
You have
started
so
the
much
day.
else to be grateful for that
Yeah,
it
you
doesn't
started the
feel as gut-wrenching.
yeah, 100%. You're like, you know what? That sucked. Not going to do that again. Learn my lesson. I'm going to
Yeah.
move on because, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have tried. So a lot of it does stem from the self-talk, what we tell ourselves, mindset. It's not BS. It really, that stuff really matters.
Yeah. I want to revisit one other thing you mentioned. Um, you said that a lot of it is since we haven't had that experience yet, it's not something that we've all exactly had experience with over and over again, dealing with that failure and growing from it. You mentioned that being able to hear older people tell us their stories is really key. And for us to hear from people we trust and other people, like, this is what happened to me and this is how I grew from it, just
Yeah.
to give us that perspective. So, what, from that point of view, what could teachers or mentors or the sort of role models in our lives, how could they work to make spaces more safe for failure?
Right. Yeah. And so, not every mentor is equal, right? I'll say one thing on mentoring. Mentors aren't going to just fall in anybody's lap. You have to go seek them out, and you have to find people that have done the things that you want to do, or somehow embody your DNA. If you feel like you want that kind of feedback, right? Because if I'm an entrepreneur and I go seek out somebody who's an accountant, right? I may not get the best advice for me. Because
Right.
maybe in that line of work, they're more safe, they're not risk prone, they're they're in an industry that fits their DNA and who they are. They're not necessarily going to be the ones out there going like, here's the risks I took in my life, and I encourage you to take these risks. That's not the kind of person that might be a good mentor for me. I want to learn from the people that are you know, 10 years ahead of where I am at least. And so if I can locate them and find them, then I have the possibility of really gaining insight and learning
So
about
people who are on the same journey as you.
yeah, similar. It doesn't have to be perfect, but similar, right? I learn from people that are are doing all kinds of different lines of work in different sectors, but the things that they have in common are they're entrepreneurs. They built their own business. They made their own, they created their own wealth, and like that's the kind of journey that I'm on. So that's what I'm learning from. But if you're in the medical field, right, do you want to learn from the people that are leading the way in thought leaders around mental health because that's the space you're going to be in, or do you want to, learn who do you want to learn from, right? And those are
Right.
the people you have to go seek out. But mentors will play an enormous role, um, if if you're strategic enough to go find them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, okay. Next question here.
yeah. I know. Go for it.
Mm, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. If you were speaking directly to somebody who was scared to start something for fear of failure, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who is afraid to try because they don't want to mess up? What would you say directly to them?
Um, Honestly, I would say that the fear is normal. Everybody has the fear. Even the most successful people in the world have the fear. I mean, we're sitting here and we're watching Elon Musk, land a rocket right on the exact same place he launched it from. And you don't think that man's a little worried every time a rocket ship goes in the air, or he's about to do some well, we froze there. It could be my Wi-Fi. I don't know if that's you or me.
Oh,
You there? You got me?
yeah, I don't think you didn't freeze for me.
Okay, all right, you froze mine. It could be my Wi-Fi. Sorry about that. Um, Elon Musk is about to launch a fleet of autonomous vehicles in Austin, Texas here soon. You don't think he's worried of what might happen? Like,
Yeah,
there's fear, but the fear doesn't stop the entrepreneur. It doesn't stop the creator. It is something you take note of, but you push through and do it anyway. And if you really are at a place where you can't push through the fear, right? Um, it it may be a sign that you're not lined up in the right place you need to be. Maybe you
right.
need to not be the person doing the thing. Maybe you need to be working with or for the person that's taking the risks until you can get more comfortable with it. Because again, you're it is all about mindset. And I would say that too, the other disadvantage too, if you think about like our Western model of education, you spent 12 to 16, 18 years, even if you went to college, with a process that isn't how the world operates. Your process was the
It's very
teacher gave
linear.
you teacher gave you an assignment. You knew clearly what you needed to do. As long as you
There's a
followed those
rubric.
instructions, you were going to get the A or the 100 perfection, right? And maybe you missed a few details and you didn't get 100, but you got close to it. But the 100 was achievable, right?
Yeah,
Because you knew the rules. There was certainty. There's amount of certainty there. But that's not how life works, especially when you're taking risks and are creating. You're
right.
bringing to life something that there is not certainty. And
In real
therefore,
life, there is no rubric. There's no 100 that applies to everybody.
right, right. So that can take a while to get used to, right? Which is why a lot of schools today are starting to shift from that education, that model education to more of a hands-on, creative, build something, do something. You set the tone for your own learning destiny, right? And
Right.
destination. And therefore it allows you to fail more as you're growing up and be more comfortable with the idea of failure. Um, and so it is something that you can get more comfortable with, uh, but it does seem scary at first.
Yeah. You said it's all about mindset, which I 100% agree with.
Yeah.
Personally, for you, what sort of mindset shifts have helped you deal with failure? As exactly like you just said, we're educated in a way that is very linear and there's a start point, there's an end point, and you know exactly the path you're going to take. When it comes to real life, where the path is not set for you and you're the one going through and forging that path, what are those mindset shifts that you need to make in order to ensure that you're successful, even in the face of those detours?
One of them is, I have to, I'm trying to figure a way to put this. Regret. I have to learn to look at things through the lens of regret. And so when I'm making a decision, it's clear. If I if I don't do something, let's say you've got two opportunities, right? You got to call you're thinking about going to college and you're like, okay, well if I get accepted to this school, there's this path, but there's also another school and I could take another career path. and there's a fork in the road, right? Um, for me, I look at it through the lens of if I don't do something, will I regret it? Will I regret it for the rest of my life? Right? I think if you ever been to a nursing home, and you're around older people that have lifelong regrets, around things they wish they should have done. I put myself in that state of mind and say, if I don't do this, will I regret it? Right? And if the answer is yes, I know I have to do it because living with that regret is way worse
But
than
yeah.
trying and failing, right? Because at
And
least I will look back and say, you know what? I wasn't afraid to do it, and at least I did it. It didn't work out. I don't have any regrets. I wish it did work out, but my regret would be bigger if I never tried it. So that's one kind of way I had to think differently about it. Um, and I'll give you another quick example. Um, I started investing late in life, learning how to
yeah.
invest in the stock market, and I learned. I got a great mentor. I found somebody uh, that was very successful. I learned a ton of stuff, and then I thought, well, um, he's doing this, but I wonder if I do these things and I just veer a little bit off from what he's telling me to do, I bet I could be more successful, right? Well, it turns out I wasn't, and I lost a lot of money, and it was
Yeah.
bad, and it was gut-wrenching because it impacted all kinds of other areas of my life. And in that season, I was like, I'm regretting that I ever started down the path of trying to invest on my own. But then I had to go back and I had to dissect. I know what I did wrong. I know why I lost the money. It wasn't a mystery to me. I knew better. And so to me, one of the mind shift changes that I had to make in that season is if I'm going to continue down this path, I must be more disciplined. I can't be emotional. If I'm emotional, I will fail. If I'm disciplined and follow the structure that I know is a winning formula, I will win. And it took me years to make up what I lost, but because I didn't quit, I'm now at a place where I've more than made up for all my losses in the stock market when most people would have quit and said, you tried it, you're not an investor, you lost.
This sucks.
Go put
Yeah.
your money in the bank and give it to somebody else to invest. You're not the right person to do it, right?
So
So,
how do you know when it's time to shift paths? How do you know when what's that turning point where you can be like, okay, yes, I've tried this and it's not worked out for me, so let me shift paths now, versus being in that position where you're like, well, I just need to stick with it. I know that I need to be more disciplined and I know that I can make that happen.
yeah, honestly, this answer is very simple. I would say before you go to bed and when you wake up in the morning, pay attention to what you're thinking about. What are the thoughts that are going through your mind? What are you envisioning? What is occupying your thought space? So, for the last, you know, 10 plus years, I've been in a position where I know the next generation desperately needs help to figure out who they are, why they're here, where they fit in. And nobody is mentoring teens. So most nights when I'm going to bed, before I wake up, something around this problem is on my mind. And the first solution we came up with wasn't like the perfect solution, but it was still on my mind. I couldn't get rid of it, right? So every year when I thought, should I be doing something else? I again went back to, well, if I quit now, will I regret quitting? But two, it was it was what was occupying all my thought space. That's how you know it's a passion, And so now, granted, if somebody more talented than me could probably step in and have created a bigger and better organization by now, but nobody else is doing that. It's me. I'm here. Until that stops, I know I need to keep moving forward. And
Right.
now that you ask the question, ironically, I'm in a transitional season in my life. My wife and I started a venue, an outdoor venue. It's a wedding venue outside of Austin, Texas, and And before I'm going to bed and when I'm waking up, the things that are now beginning to impress on my mind are how do I make this family business successful so that my wife can retire, so that we can
Yeah.
retire. And that to me, that's an indication that I may need to step back from what I've been doing for youth and step more into something else. So,
That's really good advice. I think I like that.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I could tell you follow your gut, but that's kind of weird.
yeah.
I mean, your gut can lead you in a lot of different places, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, like pay attention to what's racing through your mind because that's ultimately pointing to your passion.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about asking for help. I feel like you mentioned, finding a mentor is all about you deciding it's time for me to go look for somebody. It's a mentor's not going to fall into your lap. Somebody
Yeah,
who's going to help you is not going to fall into your lap. You have to go decide it's time to look for help and find help. So, how do you know when it's time to say this is not working out for me, I need help? And what are those steps that you could take to achieve that? Where do you start? I feel like
it's
sometimes when
great.
you're so deep in a hole,
Yeah,
it's like, how do I even start saying, okay, I need help? Like, where's the first step?
that's a great question, and it's been one of my weaknesses. So if I could go back in time and change one thing about me, this would probably be it. Because I'm a pretty, you know, I'm a humble guy, but I'm also a guy that just like never wanted to be in the um school like groups. So if you had to do a group project in school, oh man, I would rather just let me do it by myself, right? Um and so as a little bit of kind of that loner independent, super independent, I don't need anybody mentality, um that was a hard mindset shift to get rid of because here's the truth. If you want to really crush it in whatever you do, there's never going to be a time you don't need help. You should be in a perpetual state of needing help because nothing great is ever done alone. The more people you surround yourself with will get you to your target faster, right? And better, right? And so sometimes the people that are on your team aren't the best and you need to replace them with ones that are, but you should be always in a perpetual state of saying, "Hey, even when I am crystal clear on what I'm doing and I could do it by myself, I wonder who I can get to help me either to get it done quicker or to make sure I'm doing it the way it should be done. Could I be doing it better? So the more voices you bring in, sometimes can help you get to your goals quicker. And ultimately, like here's the thing, people people want to be along people want to be on the ride with folks that are going after things, right? It gives meaning, it gives purpose. And when you're driving an idea or a project or something and and you're inviting other people to be on the ride with you, it kind of makes it a little bit more enjoyable. So yeah, I'd say that that's difficult. It's one that took me a good 20 years.
Yeah.
And I still battle with it to some extent because when I have an idea, I'm ready to hit the ground running. And I rarely ask people questions or help. I wait till I get stuck or hit a brick wall. But I've seen people that have been way more successful for me do it the other way. They always bring people along with them.
Have that support net with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So you said that, it makes the journey more enjoyable when you have people with you.
yeah.
How do you sort of keep that motivation when it gets tough? Like
Mhm.
when I'm working through something difficult personally for me, the thing that
Right.
motivates me to get me to the other side is I see the vision and I know what I'm doing here and I have something that I want to get to. I have that goal. Within this small context, I have that personal 100 that I'm trying to get to. So when that personal 100 sort of falls out of your sight, you have your team of people. How do you and your team sort of stay motivated and keep pushing through, even when you don't see that final goal in reach anymore?
Yeah, you become really good at celebrating the wins along the way, right? Because you maybe didn't hit that 100, but you did do a lot of things right. And so when you stop to celebrate what people, the small wins that you have, maybe it was that one ad you ran that crushed it, or maybe it was that, you know, one adjustment you made or that one article you put out, right? It doesn't matter. It's like, hey, here are the wins. These are great wins. And then and then you can pivot to the things that weren't wins, but it's celebrating along the way that keeps the momentum going for everybody. Because if all you do is just hyperfixate on, man, we were aiming for 100 and we only got to 50. Again, that's mindset. Yeah, you got half to your
That's
goal.
more than zero. You made it
Right. Yeah,
somewhere.
totally. But that's it, right? It's like I was aiming for 100, I got to 50. And there's two mindsets, right? The mindset of like, I suck, I'm only worth half of what I thought I was. Or it's like, well, I got halfway there. What did I do right to get halfway there? Can I do more of that? Let's try that again, run it
Yeah.
back. You know what I mean? Um, so there is an extent, like, if you're a competitive person and you don't like to lose, it's like best two out of three. Oh, dang. All right, best three out of five. Best,
Yeah.
you keep upping the ante, and as long as you've got the passion and the drive, and you're just enjoying the wins along the way, that's the journey. That's why I said, going back to the very beginning, that's the journey. You there's not you don't ever really want to get to 100 or reach the mountaintop, and the reason is it's really boring up there. There's nothing to do. You've already done it. You're, you know,
Yeah.
and I think seriously, when we look at celebrities, very famous people, that's the problem that they have, right? In their world, they've reached their mountaintop, and now they're
And now
bored
they
as
don't know what
hell,
to
and now they're into drugs, and now they're into all crazy stuff. Like now it's like, well, what am I
do.
going to do to reach that high or reach that pinnacle again?
A
And they
feeling
kind of,
of, oh, I've just
yeah,
surmounted this huge thing. Now
yeah.
what?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. So, you know, um, if I look at this mentoring organization, this nonprofit we created, you know, y- at this point in my, plan, we would be at world domination. Everybody would have a mentor on the planet, right? Or we're nowhere close to that. But when I step out of this organization, what am I going to look back on? Am I going to look back on sadness that we didn't dominate the world and get every teen on the planet a mentor? No, I'm going to look at we started with nothing, $500 a
And
month,
all of the success
and
we've
no
made so
support.
far.
Yeah, exactly, just an idea. And it went from that
Yeah.
to serving tens of thousands of students and raising up thousands of mentors across the US. And it could go even further, and I hope it does. But the journey of bringing, something from nothing is really the thing that
Beautiful.
it is.
It's
Yeah,
it's a beautiful
that's the thing
journey.
you'll remember, right? So yeah, and then
Okay.
again, like, not everybody has to be a creator, but I can tell you that you'll spend a lifetime regretting the things that you let fear prevent you from doing, and that is so much
You
worse
miss
than
100% of the
trying
shots you
to.
never take.
Yeah, I mean, there's a thousand ways to say it, and there's a reason why that philosophy wins out, right? It's true. And unfortunately, you don't really get to understand how true it is until you get older. And you're like, man, why was I so afraid when I was young? I should have been going for it. I should have been more aggressive. I should
Nothing
have
to
gone
lose.
out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The 30-year-old version of yourself is gonna kick, the 18-year-old version of yourself's butt and be like, Priya, come on, take the risks, you know?
Yeah. So to wrap up,
Yeah.
my big final question for you, my reflection question, is just looking back, what failure in your life, what do you think was really the biggest blessing in disguise?
Oh man. Um, well, there's um there's been some painful ones, but um, you know, one of the things where I got stuck early in my career is, I told you I worked for Dell. I was in a sales career, and the sales career paid a lot of money. You want to make a lot of money, there's a lot of money in tech sales, right? It's not glamorous. It's not something that like a lot of people like wake up in the morning being like, I love my job. But there's a lot of money in it. So I made a lot of money in it, and that money bought me comfort, right? It bought me, nice cars, big houses, fun toys. And then in America, you tend to live up to your means. So whatever you're bringing in, you're going to spend it somehow because we're all chasing these highs, you know? And and it got to a point where I realized even though I was in a job making good money and I had the things I thought would make me happy, they weren't making me happy. The house wasn't making me happy, the car wasn't making me happy, and there's so many other adults that'll tell you the same story. And so I realized why was I unhappy? I was unhappy because I wasn't being true to who I was. I wasn't taking risks. I wasn't out there creating.
Right.
I wasn't solving problems. That was my DNA. And and so I was on the fence of making the decision of what to do, and I was in torment for like a year. Well, my numbers started slipping. I wasn't bringing the energy and focus I was to sales. So I go in one day to my job, and I got fired, and I'm like, wow, how do I go from being the top of sales to getting fired, right? This feels like there's nothing worse than getting fired. It does feel like the ultimate rejection because it is. It's like, especially when it's you. You didn't you hit your numbers, you failed. And in the sales world, I was like, man,
It feels so personal.
it does. It stings. It's like any other rejection that you might feel, and going on a date or asking somebody out and getting rejected. It feels that way, except there's more at stake because then you're like, oh my God, how do I pay rent next month, right? So
Yeah.
I'm in that state, and I realized the thing that I was really trapped by wasn't the job, it was my mindset. I was comfortable. I thought the things that I had, I became trapped by having to pay for the house and the car and all that kind of stuff. So my wife and I made a decision to sell everything. We sold the house, we sold the nice cars that we liked. We bought a tiny little mobile home and moved it on to my sister-in-law's property on the outskirts of Austin. We downsized completely, and we had three young kids at the time. We did all that because at that point, the blessing of that firing was that I was no longer going to have to be enslaved to having to bring in a lot of money to pay for toys that weren't making me happy in the first place. We cut our cost of living in half, and for the first time in a long time, I could say to myself, Joe, what do you want to do? Now that you don't have to do things, I can afford to now to do a lot of different things. And that's what put me on the path eventually. It was actually 2 years later that this organization, Catalyst, was founded. So, so a firing led to a big reset, a big redo. I came back to life in a way that was
Yeah.
more me, um, to where it was scarier, but it was more fulfilling because I was taking risks, and the
You
risks
were
that I
able
knew
to
I
be
should be
more
taking.
true to yourself, right? Like
Yes. Yes,
it
100%.
counts more when it's really you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, some of the times that happens a lot for young people going into college. I mean, a very low percentage of graduates from college actually end up in that same career field within 3 years after graduation, right? You get started, college is expensive, scholarship or not, you're on a track and you're like 2 years in, 3 years in, you're realizing this isn't the thing that I'm excited about doing, but I can't
Yeah.
stop now. I have to finish and get the degree. And then you get the degree, and then you're like, oh, my degree's in this, so I got to go ahead and at least get the job in that field. And then you find yourself unhappy. And some people allow themselves to stay stuck in there for a very long
Right.
time versus recognizing this is bad and it's going to get worse. The sooner you pivot, the better. Even though everybody's going to be upset when you do pivot, right? So,
Right. Don't let yourself get tethered to it if
yeah,
it's bringing you down.
yes, yeah, yeah, yes, 100%. So, anyway, all I have to say is it's um, yeah, I love the topic of failing forward. I love the fact that I can appreciate the difficulty in it, and it's not just difficult because you're young. At all ages, all levels of society have the same problem with fear. And there's those who push through it, hold their breath, and do it anyway. And then there's just those that are just like, I can't, it's too much. And
Yeah.
they default to safety. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. That was
So
really great. I mean, thank you so much for coming on here and giving us your very valuable advice.
you're welcome.
Um, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing. Love the podcast. Love what you're putting together, and I love that more than anything else. Love that you had an idea that you wanted to try, and you're out there trying it and doing it. Right? That is the
Yeah.
DNA you can never sacrifice. Just keep doing what you're doing. So
Thank you so much, Joe.
you're welcome.
Huge thanks to our guest Joe for reminding us that failure doesn't define us. What we do next does. Whether you're dealing with a tough grade, a missed opportunity, or something that just didn't go as planned, know this. You are not alone. You are still worthy, and you are still in motion. Failing forward is about progress, not perfection. It's about choosing growth over shame, reflection over regret, and resilience over fear. Check out our show notes for resources, stories, and links to everything we talked about. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with somebody who needs a reminder that failing forward isn't just allowed, it's essential. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time on the Purpose Pro Podcast.